feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We are brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you Tuesday afternoon. It's September 23rd, and we are back. Training camp starts next week. So this week on the show, we'll be previewing the training camp in 4 episodes. Today with Jace Frederick from the Pioneer Press, Chris Hine from the Star Tribune will be with us on Wednesday. Britt Robson from MinPost, he just did his hour-long Q&A with Chris Finch. We'll review that. Britt and I from MinPost on Thursday, and then we'll wrap up the week. Kyle and I doing one final show on Friday before Media Day. The plan today for the Jace episode is to go a little bit more big picture. We're going to do 5 big picture questions in advance of Wolves training camp. The season is here. Let's go. Today's show is brought to you by Falling Knife Brewing Company. And for the last 3 or 4 years, Falling Knife has hosted what they call Wolves Fest, and it will be happening again this October 18th, the Saturday before the season kicks off, from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. Full brewery day. There's pop-up booths, all these sort of different things. There's a bunch of Wolves-themed ones there. I'm told the Nas Reed tattoo guy, Pack Tats, will be there doing a tattoo pop-up even. Every year, it really is fun. It's a good kickoff to the season. We will have our new pod-themed beer. We're partnering with Falling Knife on a beer again this season. It's called Second Apron again. And then at Wolves Fest, Britt, Kyle, and I will be doing a pod together outside at 5 p.m. Again, the event is 3 to 9 p.m., but the pod will be from about 5 to 6 p.m. We'll take a bunch of questions, all those sort of things. So just mark your calendars for Wolves Fest at Falling Knife this year, October 18th, from 3 to 9 p.m. And get over to Falling Knife for a Lynx playoff game. Best place to watch the Wolves or Lynx with other Wolves or Lynx fans. That's Falling Knife Brewing Company in Northeast Minneapolis. All right, we are now joined by Jace Frederick. He's the Wolves beat writer over at the St. Paul Pioneer Press. It's been a couple, I think 2 months since you've been on the show. Nothing has happened in that time with the Wolves, but we are still going to do 5 bigger picture Wolves questions in advance of training camp that starts next week. Hi, Jace. How are you?
Good, man. About you? I haven't even seen you in a while.
I know. It's weird.
You look like you're doing well. I don't know.
Thanks. I haven't been doing any. That's
just playing NBA Jam, you know.
Yeah. I was saying to John, it's like I was thinking about that when he came in and we did the pod last week. I was trying to think of what is actually the amount of time or like days a week that I see you and John. Like it really is probably on average 5 or 6 days, like a week.
Yeah.
You know, during the season, and then we're all just like, yeah, let's not talk to each other
ever again.
All August.
Yeah. It's for the best, honestly.
Right. So we don't kill each other.
Yeah. For 9 months, I see you guys. It's like wife and kids, and then you guys, like literally. And so then it's just best if we just take some space.
Right. Chris just texts me fantasy football stuff all the time.
Same. Yeah.
Okay. We were texting yesterday. We're like, what should we talk about? Do some bigger picture questions. I was trying to put 5 together, and then the Fred VanVleet news happened. And that, I think, gives us actually a very relevant Wolves thing. Fred VanVleet, if people don't know, was Shams reported that he tore his ACL yesterday, or it was reported yesterday that he tore his ACL. Probably going to be out for the season. The Rockets, you think the Wolves are thin at point guard? Like the Rockets have even less at point guard than the Wolves did, and that was before this VanVleet injury. It really imbalances their team. And I think 2 months ago when you came on, we did our episode where we were kind of going through the West. Maybe it was the championship. We were just talking about where do the Wolves fit into this thing, and we gave the Rockets and Denver credit with their off seasons, and we put Denver and Houston and Oklahoma City above them. And I guess the question is here, after the Fred VanVleet injury, should the Wolves be viewed as the 3rd best team in the Western Conference entering this season?
I honestly think the Rockets are in a very similar spot that they were a year ago. And I don't think that's like a bad spot either. I just think like they'll get through the regular season with, Şengün is a very good player. And so like I think offensive production will be fine for them. I think when they get in the playoffs, it's like, well, who's our creator? And it was Fred VanVleet in last year's playoffs, and it'll be KD in this one. And it's like they're just probably not enough depth, I think, to win 4 rounds offensively now behind that, where I think if you had VanVleet and KD kind of taking pressure off one another with the Şengün piece in there,
yeah,
that's enough where it's like, okay, now I can see us, with a top tier defense pushing through all of this. And now I just think it's going to be a little bit tougher, but I still think they're going to be a very good team, like a top 2, 3, like a home court team in the West. Now, what seed they land on exactly, I don't know. But if they stay relatively healthy, if KD stays healthy, I still think they have enough there. I just think like the VanVleet thing, because you saw he had to carry them for large chunks of that playoff series against Golden State. And having him with KD, I think would have been like giving them a puncher's chance even against like the Denvers and the OKCs of the world. But without it, I don't see them having enough offense when we get to that point. But I still like defensively, like, Ime's teams are pretty consistent in like the effort they bring. And like, it's Thompson, you got to assume is going to continue to grow as a player. Şengün continue to grow. He's obviously had a great international summer here. They've got good players. I still think they'll be a good team. Still think it's a 50+ win team. I just think maybe it caps their ceiling a little bit.
So I looked up the win totals after I saw the VanVleet news. So I don't know if these. I don't think it moved.
Oh, really? Not at all. Okay.
It would. I looked at FanDuel after I saw the Fred VanVleet news, and Houston you could still bet on over under 54.5 wins, which is the second highest. Oklahoma City is 62.5. Houston's 54.5. Denver's 53.5. The Wolves are 49.5. The Lakers are 49.5. Clippers are 47.5. Warriors 46.5. Those are the top teams up there. So I don't know if that'll drop or something like that in time, but they're still viewed as 5 games ahead of the Wolves in the betting market. So I think they do still belong in that mix, but I think you absolutely need to drop them down some. And I think it maybe kind of overrates it to say that the Wolves are the 3rd best team now, but I think now Houston is down with them, and I think down with the Wolves is the Lakers and the Clippers. And it's kind of, at least as I sit here today before really digging into any of this stuff, I kind of look at it as OKC tier, Denver tier, then Minnesota, Houston, LA. That's kind of where I'm sitting at with it. But you can, in that, say, yeah, the Wolves are the 3rd best team or likely to be a home court team. I mean, like, what would you put the odds of the Wolves getting a top 4 seed right now?
If I was going to put it on like betting odds from those top 4 seed, like, I don't know.
Or just percentage, like more likely or
percentage.
Not.
Yep. Like 60. 65.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
60, 65 range. I think it's pretty likely. It can be an injury here or there, but like if everybody stayed healthy, I think continuity and whatnot, there's no reason why they shouldn't really hit the ground running. Just shouldn't have to dig themselves out of a hole or anything like that. I would say like right in that 60, 65 range. Like I actually think it'd be more like OKC, Denver, Minnesota, Houston, maybe another tier break. And then like your Lakers and Clippers, maybe LeBron and Luka play a whole season together. They figure a lot of things out. I don't know, but defensively and size is still just going to be a question mark there.
I was doing some reading around on different teams and looking at stuff yesterday, and I could tell I'm going to be a Clippers person. I'm going to be.
You just always been a big Brad Beal guy. You're just like, you're like, wow, they just answered a lot of questions right there. Yeah, I know.
No, I'm serious though. It's like they're
obviously good vibes right now. Good,
yeah, really good vibes.
Yeah, I hear
you. But you know that has so little impact, I think, on the actual players.
And it's not going to be a storyline throughout the season because they'll ask Kawhi about it 2 different times, and he'll give 0 answer, and they'll be like, I guess we got to move on from this because we're not getting anything out of it.
That's true. I mean. Yeah, I'm not saying they're going to be necessarily better than the Lakers or the Wolves, but
it's fair to just say they went 7 with Denver too. Like, I think it's so much like if you lose in the first round, you're written off as like not competitive. It's like the Clippers went 7 with Denver. Like, it was a very competitive series. Game 7 wasn't, but like Denver kind of stole game 1. Otherwise, who knows what happens in that series? Like Like Houston kind of got written off last year. It's like, yeah, they just were okay.
Right.
It's like they almost beat Golden State with Curry.
Absolutely. Sorry, you just broke up there for a second, but I think I got you back. One thing with Houston, well, I guess two things. Reed Shepherd, who I think has all these connections to Rob Dillingham for a lot of different reasons, is put into a position to like need to play and go. Probably even more than Dillingham is now. They have a huge need at the guard position. I don't know how exactly they're going to handle that. So that's just going to be an interesting one to sort of track over the course of the year. Shepherd and Dillingham both playing. I am curious to see what Houston does here, sort of as like recourse for this. And I was, looking at stuff yesterday. They have like that disabled player exception, like remember when like Gordon Hayward got hurt with his thing, then you can get like a $12.5 million disabled player exception, and you can get a new it's like a mid-level exception basically for free. Can be used to sign a free agent to a 1-year deal, can be used to trade for a player on a true expiring contract, no options allowed, so it can't have any team or player options, and you have to stay under the first apron. I was thinking about that. Can be used to trade for a player on a true expiring contract with no options allowed. Does that sound like a point guard to you?
Like what
Mike Conley.
I heard. I'm not entertaining.
I know.
No, it doesn't.
That's
no, it doesn't actually. No.
I know that will not happen. But if you were the Rockets, that is like the perfect guy for them to go get within this really
right
thin path. I know the Wolves won't.
The Rockets would be like, wow, this will kind of solve our point guard stuff. And the Wolves could be like, nice, we'll do that. And then we can be in your spot. Like, and then we can have to go look for a veteran point guard. That sounds amazing. Like, okay, here's my only Rockets question. I think this is kind of important now without VanVleet. Because I think if you talk about like what really matters, like obviously depth and whatnot matters for how many games you win in an 82 game season. But like when you get to the playoffs, what matters? Who is their closing five in your mind? Because VanVleet would have been in it and now he's not.
Yeah, so I don't know. Does Shepherd go in there? Like,
I don't know. I mean, I think you'd have to.
I don't know what they do at point guard.
I don't think
the point guard.
I think Thompson might be their closing time point guard.
Yeah, and then Şengün, KD, Jabari,
and Eason. You're gonna go that big?
I don't.
Maybe not Eason.
Yeah. I'm telling you. You look at it. The team was already super weird in pre-VanVleet injury of like big/wings versus guards. It's like Aaron Holiday, I think, is on that team. They're not going to be a team who plays a traditional point guard, I think is what your point is.
That's what I'm saying. At winning time for sure. And even Reed Shepherd is not he's more of a scoring guard. But I just think that I'm not so sure on Reed and Rob. It's like the idea of like, okay, they just grow, but I don't know. Like there's a lot of ways to go there. I think for any of those teams, like relying on championship level guys.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I mean, it'll just be interesting. I was going to say it's a good representation of what I think we're going to talk about a lot over the course of the year with the Wolves being thin at point guard is how few teams around the league are actually playing a point guard in their closing lineups, much like Houston is going to maybe have that big group there. Well, maybe the Wolves aren't closing games with Mike Conley or Rob Dillingham. It is the time in the league, if there was ever one, where it was sort of least important to have a point guard. Not to say it isn't important. I think it's a concern for both of these teams, but you can get away with non-point guard lineups probably more now than you could, obviously more than you could previous. But can you if
I
think so. I do.
Can you if you want to actually win something? I understand over the course of a season you can, but if you actually want to win, if you want to compete for the championship, can you?
I don't know. Maybe not against that bar. I think that.
And what bar are these teams going for? Like, what bar are these teams trying to clear?
Houston and Minnesota. Yeah.
The Houston just traded for Kevin Durant. Are they not trying to win the championship?
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think for all. I mean, just to play devil. I hear where you're going. I think a lot of the mentalities now around the league is like, winning enough games, being good enough, getting yourself into a position to be able to be it's the bites at the apple thing, which we don't like, but I do think that
Because
is
it's
a
wrong.
mentality. Yeah, well, I'm just saying, I think that's what they're thinking. If you're asking,
right.
Play a lot of good talent, get there, and then hopefully you've kind of figured out a way.
You hope the true best team gets hurt. I mean, basically.
that might just be the thing with the Thunder this year, though. Like in general, around the league,
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I mean,
I'm not arguing this is like a good thing.
I agree.
For both Houston and Minnesota, I think it's a little bit more manageable now than it would be before. And I would say the Wolves are in a way better spot.
Yeah, no, I'm not arguing where the Wolves are at with point guard, and I'm not really necessarily arguing with where Houston's at, but I just the whole like. I do think it's important to have like a point guard option, and the fact that Houston doesn't have one, I think probably will hurt it late in close playoff games when it's like, well, we have KD in these spots, and I think it's going to be a little bit harder now to even initiate actions where you're getting KD in his spots. We saw that with Phoenix.
Look at Phoenix.
Yeah, exactly. 1000%. Where like it's harder for him to get the ball exactly where he wants it, so he can be his most effective closing self. Now you're putting guys in uncomfortable situations, like where they aren't at their best. And as we saw with Phoenix, it makes guys look worse as players. Like Şengün can kind of initiate some stuff, but again, like how are you setting it all up? Like, and how are you working off of that? I think it's a big question for Houston, not in the regular season. It might show up in the end of a couple games, but like when it actually gets to what matters, I think that will be a big deal.
Yeah, and I think Şengün is the X factor here. It's like how much more can he be an offensive like hub than he was, a season ago? Because that is another way to like initiate offense, as we've seen with some of the obviously Jokic and some of the other big stars. But they have a tall task ahead of them, and that's why if for some reason this line doesn't move down, I don't think 54.5 is good. I think it's going to cost them at the end of games. And to your point, I think it'll probably cost them, in the playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised if they find some way to address the position over the course of the season too. But it's our first sort of shift in the balance.
And just say like it sucks. Like it sucks when like we're losing key players in the NBA before, not even like in we haven't even started like preseason, like training camp hasn't started yet, and you lose guys like that. Like that's always like when it just comes across of like a Shams notification, and it's like, how did that happen? And how it happened, but it's just like there's gonna be enough injuries throughout the way. Like when it happens before anything even gets rolling, it just is like that doesn't seem right. But it's part of sports.
That's how I feel about James Conner on my fantasy team.
But at least it happened in the season. I had a lot of James Conner too, but at least it happened in the season. Right.
So
it makes more sense in your mind.
Yeah, I Burrow too. So it's
we're on to basketball.
I guess we got to move on. All right, we'll grab a break and we'll come back with Chase. We'll do 4 more questions here. Today's show is brought to you by Your Home Improvement Company. We know there are a chunk of you out there who are trying to get a home improvement project done this fall. We would love it if you made Your Home Improvement Company your answer to that project. Right now, they are offering buy 2 windows, get 2 windows free. That deal on triple pane windows. The windows come with a lifetime warranty and are installed by certified professionals. They also specialize in updating outdated bathrooms, and they are offering that 30% off deal on bathroom remodels. Their bathroom renovations are also done by certified local professionals and backed with that lifetime warranty. Whatever the project is, Your Home Improvement Company offers great financing deals that require 0 money down, 0 interest, and 0 payments until 2026. Wolves could be, champions by then. Contact Your Home Improvement Company by calling 866-777-YHIC or by going to yourhomeimprovementco.com. Your Home Improvement Company, where it's your home made better. Today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks, and with the NBA season pretty much here, I want to direct you to the NBA season-long tab at Prize Picks. Remember when we were talking, back in the summer about season-long NFL Prize Picks, more or less than 1,400 rushing yards for Saquon Barkley, or more or less than 3,700 passing yards for Josh Allen, whatever. There was a bunch of them. Well, they have that for the NBA too. The NBA ones work a little bit different there in terms of per game averages. So you'll see Anthony Edwards more or less than 27.5 points per game, or more or less than 11.4 rebounds per game for Cat in New York. I've had a lot of fun tracking my NFL season-long prize picks, and I think the NBA ones will be equally entertaining. There's always something going on over at Prize Picks. As a reminder, to put together a lineup at Prize Picks, all you need to do is put 2 or more picks in your lineup to win. If you don't yet have a Prize Picks account, all you do is put in the promo code DANE when you sign up, and you will receive $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. That's prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app using promo code DANE. All right, Chase, let's move over to a more Wolves-specific question. You threw this one out to me. Can the Wolves again have an elite defense this season? And we're sort of setting that bar at what it was 2 seasons ago. You put like a sub 109 defensive rating. 2 seasons ago, the Wolves were their defensive rating. They're first in the league. It was 108.9. Second best in the league. Remember, there's a huge gap. Second best was Orlando at 111.5. And then last season, the Wolves fall to 6th in defensive rating. They're 111.6. OKC was 107.4. There's a huge gap between where the Wolves were and OKC was. Why were they so elite that season? And what do the Wolves need to do, or can they do, to get back to that level?
For me, it's not even like as much of an X's and O's thing. I really do think it was a mentality thing. Like, the team 2 years ago had like such a massive chip on its shoulder in my mind of like, we need to get to the top. We think we should be a team that's at the top. And here's how we're going to get there. And like night in and night out, they look like a super motivated group of like, we're going to put everything we have specifically into that end of the court. And it was hell to play against the Wolves 2 years ago. And I don't really think it was last year. And I know at the end you could say, well, they still got to the West Finals and whatnot, but it was different. And I just think you can talk about like the roster reshuffling, Cat, Randall, whatever, but I think it was Anthony Edwards didn't deliver the same defensive effort on that end. I don't even think Jaden McDaniels for parts of the season played with that same defensive edge. I think Nas maybe had his worst defensive season in a lot of different ways. So I just think guys got lax on that end of the court a little bit to where there just wasn't that same tenacity. And when a couple of your perimeter guys aren't playing with the same edge, like it's all of a sudden it's easier for other teams to get into their action, get into their stuff, generate more good looks. Those shots start to fall. Like I think like the best, I think it's mostly going to come down to can Jaden McDaniels and Anthony Edwards, and specifically Anthony Edwards, probably play with that edge on that side of the court. And you can talk all you want about like, well, he has to do so much else. But I honestly think like what he does defensively when it's locked in is what makes the Wolves most difficult to beat.
I agree. Yeah.
Like I just can never get past that game 3 of the West Finals and the way Ant played with like his hair on fire in that first quarter and the tone it set of like, wow, this team looks unstoppable right now. Because he's like breaking up plays, like, and it's basically like these pick sixes where he's heading the other way, and it just sets the team on fire. And then you look in game 4, and it was like, well, the ball pressure's back to non-existent. OKC's getting into all their actions again. I just remember pre-game 5 asking Finch like, where did the ball pressure go? And he's like, yeah, I don't know. We watched the film after game 4, and that's where we were like, what happened here? And it was like the Wolves were the team that played game 3 for the most of the 23-24 season. And that team just didn't pop up very much in 24-25. And we can talk about all these offensive things throughout the year of how do you unlock this? How do you do this? How do you maximize this guy? I think the best championship version of this team is one that plays defense.
I think you're absolutely right. And I'm glad you brought it up because it's good to look back into. And I wrote down like it's a mentality and intention thing. It's not stats. But then I pulled up the stats. And I think the stats really line up and tell the story that you're telling. That team from 2 years ago, they allowed the 6th fewest threes and the 2nd most mid-range shots in the league, and they they allowed the 9th fewest shots at the rim. They played you off the 3-point line, and they forced you into the mid-range. And when you were in the mid-range, you were also guarded intensely by the rear view defender, Jaden or Ant or Conley, whatever, coming off of the screen, defending that that step in mid-range shot, and Rudy was there. And so their opponents shot the second most mid-range shots in the league, and they had the second worst mid-range had the second best mid-range field goal percentage. So teams are shooting all of these mid-range shots and making them at a way lower clip than they do in other games. And it was because the intention was there and that point was there. And it was always get him off the line, bring him into Rudy understanding like what depth to play at there. Carl was also in the middle of the floor there. It was just Kyle Anderson was in the middle of the floor there. Also another big body, smart defender. And they just kind of like strangulated you into like, is that a word? Strangled?
Yes, strangulated.
Yeah, it's something
I feel like they're both a word. Yeah.
But that's what happened. If you look at the numbers of it, and then you go to the following or last season, and the Wolves had the 20th field goal percentage from the mid range, and teams are hitting that better against the Wolves than they were against other opponents, and they were taking fewer of them. I'm almost surprised that didn't make a bigger drop than first to sixth. But I'd say that all to mean I think that's correctable. Like I think you can get back to some of that. You don't have Karl Anthony Towns and Julius Randle, and I think that hurts you in this. Karl Anthony Towns and Kyle Anderson in the mid range area there, and that it just always felt congested in the middle of the lane. I think Julius can get a little bit better, like at that, and understand that this is what they're doing. I think Rudy can still hold down the rim in that short mid-range area like he used to. And I think the guards or wings, for the most part, can do that defense again. Nikhil being gone takes away from some of that. And also 2 years ago, Mike Conley was really good at that. Was a capable, perimeter defender that was limiting guys when he was on the ball there too. And that's not as much there. So
we'll see.
That's what they got to get back to.
We'll see if Mike saying he's healthy and moving better. We'll see if he can get back to that. And like,
he's not going to get all the way back to it, though.
No, I agree. It can be better than it looked for the first half of last season for sure. But how much better will play a big question, how good the defense can be. And then like Rob's going to play more. How good can the defense be? And then, TJ, how does he defend? And I think we talk about all these other guys. Like, I really think the best version of this team is a defensive one. So that's why if I was making rotations, like Jalen Clark would be in it, and he would play a fair amount because it would be like, yeah, this might limit what we can do offensively. I don't care. That's where I would be at, and at least until we had an identity established. I would. This guy plays the way that represents the best brand of Timberwolves basketball, and I would lean into it until it proved detrimental, which I don't necessarily know if it would, because some of the times last year where they was like, okay, they look like their old selves, it was because Jalen Clark was applying this ball pressure and steals coming out of
forcing you into the mid-range, forcing you into Rudy,
this team
forcing them to take worse shots.
Hates naturally playing in transition, but when you are ball hawking and forcing turnovers, like transition is stuffed down your throat. Like you have no choice but to play it, and all of a sudden it's like, 12-0 run. How did that happen? Like 2 years ago, I would remember like they would get like a steal turn into a dunk, and I would just go down to type a tweet about it, and all of a sudden people would cheer in because they got another one. And that just didn't happen that much last year, and it's just like, I don't know if naturally they're going to play in transition outside of Terrence Shannon again. So this is a way, though, that just forces it if you run your offense through your defense. And I know, like, sometimes that can be viewed as like, oh, their offense is their defense. Like, they're not well-rounded enough. But, like, OKC just did a lot of that. and it worked out pretty great. And I think that Minnesota still has that in them as well. But it's just it's going to come down to a big degree because that is hard. Don't get me wrong. Like, that is hard.
But Jalen, I wrote down Jalen Clark too. I think Jalen Clark needs to play until he proves to be a Kyle Anderson on offense.
Right.
And it's
maybe past it. Keep doing it anyway.
Yeah. You do need to keep the balance of both sides, but in the somewhat limited sample of Jalen Clark last season, he didn't seem to be that problematic on offense. He did hit they were wide open, but he hit them, he hit them at a good clip. But it'll be interesting just to see what Finch does what is he prioritizing? You know, is he prioritizing this type of, is this defense thing really high on like the to-do list? Because then you put a little bit more Jalen Clark, you know, into the potion there, or you know, the rotation shifts in that sort of way. And he's also trying to, you know, be better at offense this season as well. He's trying to get out and transition a little bit more. I'm just curious to see where he strikes that balance, because he's been the one who's been saying, you know, we're a defense first team for years and years, and that has been his intention. How much does that intention shift, you know, this year at all? Because your personnel is different. Your defensive personnel is different. You're not as good of a defensive team personnel wise as you were 2 years ago, because that was a really, really good defensive team with Mike Younger, Nikhil, you know, and Kat and Kyle. It was they had the team to be the number one defense. It's still going to be a good defensive team. I just don't know if it is, if they can get to that elite level. I think they can for sure get to top 5 and stuff like that if they were 6th last year. But yeah,
I think I know, like, yeah, this at the bottom, but I do think I'll get to the Rudy thing here in a sec. But I just think, as we saw like in that Thunder series last year, I just don't know if they ever like established like, here's who we are as a team. Like, here's our true identity. Here's what we can
like
lean
the
on.
whole season.
Yeah, you know, like, okay, what are the Wolves? Like, what do they hang their hat on? And you can be pretty good at a lot of things, and then you get like hit in the mouth, and then it's like, what can we fall back on? And in that Thunder series, in those games in Oklahoma City, the answer was nothing. They just kind of crumbled because they had nothing to fall back on. It wasn't like, well, we can't score at all right now, but neither can they. You know, like there was none of that. And I think they got to like pick a lane a little bit of like, what are we? Who are we? What are we going to win with? Like in Game 7 in Denver, like they won because Denver couldn't score anymore in the second half of Game 7, because the Wolves had established that as themselves all year. So all they had to do was tap back into what they were already good at. When they were on 20 points in the third quarter of Game 7, when you look like you're dead, you tap into who you've been and you come back. And in the Thunder, they had nothing to tap into. It was like, I don't know, we're just done. Like, and that was what it was every single game they played in Oklahoma City. There's nothing when like the crowd's against you, the score's against you, you feel like everything's against you. There's nothing to lean into. So what can you establish this year to lean into? And that's why I'll get to our second one here. Sorry, third talking point, the Rudy Gobert thing. I don't know if it makes sense. I think they have to decide, like, what lane are we picking with Rudy Gobert? Because I was looking at game logs, and we remember this, the back half of the regular season, it was like the Rudy show. And I was looking at minutes logs, like the last 15 games of the season, Rudy was playing 38, 38, 34, 40, 38. Okay, so
this
is a Rudy Gobert team. And then you get to the playoffs, 24, 24, 25, 27. He's playing like half the game. And it's like, okay, so are you saying that this is that your playoff version, Rudy just has to be basically a reserve who starts? Because then what are you establishing in the regular season if you're playing an entirely different lineup? Because when Rudy's out there, when he's not out there, like it can just be one person, but it's a totally different dynamic, frankly, of who you are as a team. And I think you kind of have to pick which one. Like, is Rudy going to play half the time, or is Rudy going to be somebody we're going to lean heavily into? Because I don't know if you can have Rudy's going to be our regular season innings eater, and then we're going to go a different way in the playoffs. And that thing that we haven't really tapped into in the playoffs is just going to excel when things get hard. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Are they comfortable again having a different identity in the regular season versus the playoffs? And I think I'll do the devil's advocate thing again, though I'm with you here. A little bit of it is in the playoffs, you know, who are you matched up against? And it was the Lakers and the Warriors who were not playing a center.
Didn't play that much in the Thunder series either, but yeah.
That's why I was going to say, like, I haven't looked.
But
at
then
the logs there. Was it?
But then the Lakers series, it was Game 5. He played 38 minutes and dominated. So like, it was. Finch has always talked about how you want the other team to adjust to you, and then they get to the playoffs and they're adjusting to the other team. You know, like that. That's to me is like that shows to me maybe a non-commitment, but which is fine. But I don't understand hammering it all regular season. Especially you're not saying, you know, you need to play Rudy 34 minutes a night, hell or high water, no matter what. Right.
You're saying what's the normal?
Yeah.
What is the preferred sort of path there? You always need to like make adjustments and stuff like
Right.
that. And if Rudy, wasn't having any impact and was getting in the way of the offense as he was in the playoffs, I understood in the Lakers series why Rudy was playing 24 minutes. I
Right.
understood in the Warriors series too. But then when you're like represented with here's a team that plays a 7-footer at all times and sometimes two in Hartenstein and Holmgren. What do you want? And that didn't feel clear at any point what they wanted their playoff identity to be. And it was, some of that was clouded by the opponent, but I'm with you. And it's not just about Rudy like on defense. It's Rudy. It's all Rudy on offense. The only reason you need to switch that identity is because Rudy's being guarded by a 6'5" guy or ignored or whatever. And yeah, I mean, we talked about that in like March. We're like, the reason if the Wolves do not get through the West and go to the finals, it's going to be because Rudy was not, the Wolves were not able to make Rudy impactful offensively in the playoffs. And that was the case outside of a couple of games when he was impactful on offense, only because he was getting a bunch of offensive rebounds.
Right.
They never found something in the playoffs of effective Gobert offensive inclusion that was just like in the half court of this, this or that. So I think you're right. I think they need to figure out who they're going to be in both and go back to what Finch was saying is, we don't want to be, we want to be the team that teams adjust to. We don't want to be the team that adjusts to them. But that it was very, very different with Rudy regular season versus playoffs.
And I understand the idea that Rudy brings a consistency that helps leads to regular season success. That's been the case for years now here. And you mentioned the matchups. Like, okay, well, against Golden State, LA, and then the Thunder, like if they say, we don't know if Rudy playing heavy minutes was our best in any of those. It's like, okay, well, who do you think you're going to play in the playoffs this year? Probably like those teams. So should you better prepare yourself during the regular season and figure out that version that you think is your best playoff answer? Should you give that more opportunity to grow and blossom and develop an identity and let that group face more problems and find solutions so it has more answers when the time comes that's necessary, versus being like, they'll just figure it out later. This helps us win regular season games right now. Because that feels like you're setting yourself up to fail then when you get to like the Western Conference Finals or whatever, because you didn't give that group a chance to fail and build itself back up because you're just concerned about winning right then.
Yeah. I think this plays into the roster continuity question, which I guess is question 4. What will roster continuity lead to a hot start to the season for the Wolves? And it would, if you were just like, we are running it this way and we are running it back. We're doing it over again. If you look at the season when they ran it back with Carl and Rudy, they started that season 16-4. Last season, they were 10-10 after they made it at 20 games into the season after they made a big change. The first Carl and Rudy season, they were 10-10 to start the season. The season before that, the Pat Bev year, when they changed the roster up, they were 10-10 to start the season. They're like
4-9.
Yeah, right.
And then got hot to get to 10-10.
But they always seem to need to find themselves in the first 20 games of the season. And I don't think this group on paper should need to find itself in the first 20 games of the season. They do have largely the same roster. They should run it back. And I think they should be a team that wins 12, 13, 14 games in the first 20 games of the season, unless, to your point, they are finding themselves in the first 20 games of the season because they are putting in place like a new identity, a new, setting themselves up to fail and learn from it. I don't know. Maybe you can do both of those things and still start the season somewhat hot. What do you think there?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to be in a better spot. Just, I also want to make one last point on the Rudy thing is I'm not
Sure.
saying that they have to do like the play more Nas, Julius, play that lineup a lot more, diminish Rudy's minutes because that's what they have to do in the playoffs. I'm saying they could also be like, nope, we're going to be a better defensive team this year. We're going to be elite defensively. So even in the playoffs, we're going to play Rudy like we did 2 years ago with like beating Denver and whatnot. You could take that route as well. I'm just saying, like, I think you should probably pick one. Like at
Right.
least to start the year. What is our true identity? Let's test it out in multiple ways and kind of plan backwards from the playoffs. So what do we think we're going to need and work on it from there? But yeah, with continuity, like I think the assumption is like just from the way they finished the regular season and then obviously the playoffs, the OKC series was terrible, but they did handle the Lakers pretty well, obviously, and then the Golden State series I don't even really count. But generally like the final third of the season was really good. So if you just did that and you assume that, like Conley's healthy and Gobert's in a good spot and all these other guys are coming back fresh and like with a better idea of how to work together, even if you're ironing a few things out, you're in a much better spot than you were last year. And a few other times too, where like you said, like it was these teams basically had to be like, what are we? That's kind of those really bad starts. Like the Pat Bev year, the beginning of the year was like, what are we? And then they figured it out. They should have some pretty good idea, and I'd be surprised if they don't get off on a good foot, because they do know some things that work, and obviously they want to find more things. They want to figure out, okay, how do we better use Dante DiVincenzo offensively, like to make him comfortable? Like, what is our right balance of point guard leaning on the point guard and initiating some stuff, Julius initiating some stuff? We found some balance there, but what's the most sustainable? Like those little things, but I think those are so much smaller then we have to incorporate new players that I think nobody knows exactly what their final form is game one, but they will have a head start on a lot of teams.
Today's show is brought to you by Skims. Skims, you obviously have maybe heard about more from the women's clothing space, but they have really expanded their product to the men's side of things, specifically men's underwear. And I've said this before, but my favorite thing about Skims is that it's a type of boxer brief that both works for going to the gym and just for everyday life. I have the stretch 5-inch boxer briefs, and they work functionally like compression shorts. I would wear it back in the day when I play basketball or when I'd go on runs, but they're just significantly more comfortable. And that is what's unique about them. You can wear one pair to the gym and another pair after the gym when you're just hanging out at home. Like I said, 5-inch stretch boxer briefs are my personal favorite, but they also have cotton briefs amongst other styles. I think you should try and find a pair that works for you, because you're going to like them. Be more comfortable. Shop Skims Men's at skims.com and Skims stores. And please let them know that we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. Today's show is also brought to you by BetterHelp. We've all done it before, talking to our bartender or our barber or some random stranger for life advice just because we want to talk. And as fun as they may be to talk with about everyday topics, when you're looking for actual help about relationships, anxiety, depression, or other clinical issues, those people probably don't have all the right answers. Instead, get guidance from a credentialed therapist online with BetterHelp. BetterHelp is flexible. It's completely online, and you can pause your subscription whenever you need to and switch therapists at any time at no extra cost. And they're going to help you find the right match. BetterHelp has over 30,000 licensed therapists, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional cost. It is easy and effective. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Find the one with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/DaneMoore. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/DaneMoore. Yeah, I guess the way to put it would be like, if they look a lot like last season's team right away at the beginning of this season, they may win a lot of games right out of the gate, but kind of then need to pay the bill down the line, right? Because you're playing like last season's team, which, to your point, which I think is accurate, is what are we? What is our identity for the playoffs? Conversely, it might look really different the first 20 games of the season than it did a season ago, and they made some shifts stylistically in the pace that they're playing with, defending, whose minutes, whatever, and it isn't the strong start, but you go, okay, maybe we can see some traction to what the goal for the identity is going forward, and maybe those are different win totals or look like different levels of success. But to your point, if the end game is, what you can do in the playoffs, what you can do to win in the conference finals, maybe you don't want the team to look exactly the same. And then, you're not as excited about a 15-5 start if you're like, well, I think there's still going to be problems when they play really good teams in the playoffs. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I don't think the two different paths though are like 15-5 and 10-10. Like I think either one you lean into would be like you're still playing all these guys, maybe just different minute totals or whatever, and they still know how to play with each other, even if they're working through some things. I think it might be like, oh, we went this different route, so we won 13 games instead of 15. Like, I mean, I understand games can flip in the last 5 minutes, so maybe taking route A versus route B can change it a little bit, but I don't think it'd be like, well, we're going to do this. We're playing 5 rookies, so now we're going to stink. Like I don't, with the benefit paying off later. I think it would just be little marginal things, pushing through a rough spot where we'd be like, okay, this team is presenting us this problem. Like it's like specific little games. Like this good team is giving us this problem. We could go to this right now, but I think in the long run, sticking with this group and making them figure it out so we have an answer with this group when the time comes in May, our best solution. We might lose tonight because of it. I don't think it's like, I think that's about the extent of it, which is like 1 or 2 games, right, here and there.
Yeah, it's having the short term and the long term like at the forefront of your mind. And I do think last season's team, given the trade and the pressure that came, with repeating and what they did a season ago, I mean, Finch was clearly in regular season win mode last year. Obviously, that's highlighted by only 8 guys playing, all sort of different things.
Trying to dodge the play-in, you understand it all,
And he had to, right? Yes. Like, if the theory is correct that, playing the 8 guys and playing in that sort of way, or right, the theory is if you would have played Rob Dillingham more, sure, he gets experience, but maybe you lose a few more games. Well, if you lose a few more games, now you're in the play-in and you're not going to be able to go back to the conference finals. So I still think there'll be some of that. I still think Finch is very much like a win in the regular season type guy. It's just there's maybe more of a middle ground where it's like, take advantage of, you do have this continuity. You are running it back. And generally speaking, or historically speaking, that should lead to you being a pretty good team out of the gate. But can we also sort of be building the plane, the identity, like on the runway a little bit here too? It's I don't know. It's like, it seems like more of like a global task for Finch this year to coach it.
I think you can play different lineups and still be like, we're going to win every game because we're going to play every game with a playoff like intensity like they did 2 years ago. Like, it's like, if you're going to be on the court, we want to play all these lineups, but if you're not going to bring that defensive intensity, then we'll scrap it and you're not going to play. Like it's that kind of thing.
It's the defensive identity is what like, has to be there, regardless of how you're playing.
Right. Yeah. That's what you have to build. And that is like a play every game like it's a playoff game to some degree. And then we'll have build that up to the point where that's what you can lean on. Ideally, like you said, like you're playing the lineups that you think will best be able to execute that when the time comes. But everybody has to do it or you won't play as much, like no matter what you think you're building in the long term. But those are the things you can iron out things offensively if you are defending at a high enough level to kind of navigate the waters as you do maybe try to figure some things out on offense.
I think it's totally logical. Like, you set that baseline of high level defense, maybe not elite because you don't have the personnel, but then offensively, like this team is going to get better offensively over the course of the year. I think,
they still have better defensive personnel than a lot of teams do.
Yes.
Like, I agree with you. Like, best in the league. No, I agree with you on that. But like, if they have a bad defensive game, it's not because they didn't have the guys to do it.
But you agree that the theory that the offense will be better is
it was
true,
last year,
right?
Yeah, I mean, it was last year. It was like a top 10 offense.
I'm saying even better than, kind of, it's like the continuity value of Dante and Julius. Like, I think both of them will have better offensive seasons, will better incorporate themselves into the offense this season. Again, maybe not right away, but I think come the turn of the January, whatever, I think we go, okay, Dante DiVincenzo makes a lot more sense in this offense than he did a year ago in January. Julius Randle makes a lot more sense than he did a year ago there. So
they did have a top 5 offense after January. I mean, like, it was really good. January. Yeah. Jan 1. Yeah. So I agree that, I mean, yeah, if you go top 5 offense for the season, Yeah, maybe. I do think though, I honestly think like if you are exerting that much effort defensively, it can dip a little bit because you're putting so much into the defensive end and you might be better
Sure.
for it. This is the exact opposite of conversation we were having last year. As it was like, is it okay if the defense dips if the offense gets better? And maybe you're like, yeah, we think it will. We'll stay on that route.
Mhm.
Because we think if the offense just continues to rise, it pushes us closer to a title. Where in my mind, I think you have to veer back the other way a little bit to actually be closer. But
Maybe you
I
just
guess I
need
don't
to
know
be
if you're right.
elite on one side.
Yeah, sure. And
And
maybe they think the path is more to be elite on offense. I don't, but maybe they do
yeah,
think that.
they have better defensive personnel than they have offensive personnel. There's
I
a
agree.
greater likelihood that they could be a top 3 defense than a top 3 offense, right?
I agree.
Yeah, and yeah, so and if you need to be elite on one side of the ball to be a champion or to, win 50 plus games, whatever, it makes sense to give a little more focus to your stronger side of the ball. Let's do our last one. What is Ant adding a mid-range shot going to feel like this season? I'm assuming he worked on it in the summer, like he said he would. It's obviously not been a strength of his from an effectiveness standpoint in his career. I do think kind of Ant says he's going to do something though. He's probably like, I do think the mid-range volume is going to increase this season. What would be an effective way to incorporate more mid-range for him?
An effective way? I mean,
Yeah.
I think
Or
for
can
him,
it be effective?
do you think that was what he should have spent his offseason on?
No, I'm just saying it's like,
No, I know. I'm saying, I
I
mean,
think
like,
that's what he's going to do.
I agree. I think it's going to be. I'm really interested to see how he incorporates it, frankly, because I
Right.
think there are so many of these like the step in three was the best shot he had last year,
One of the
and
best in the whole NBA of
and then
anybody in the whole NBA.
exactly like maybe the best shot in the NBA like
Mhm.
last season, and then teams are taking it away, and to me the answer sure seemed to be to try to get to the rim and finish there.
Mhm.
Because I don't know, like the things that teams were doing in defensively to take away the three in the playoffs. The answers seem to be to get to the rim. I don't know if the way that they were defending was freeing up the mid range at all. And I just like so many teams play drop to the point where if it's drop, the three is there. And if
Mhm.
it's not drop, the lane is there. I understand in general, like the mid range for me is something where it's like you're taking out pick and roll at that point. You're trying to get a step on in
Mhm.
an isolation situation. And then you're getting to that and hitting a shot like you got to step on your guy, and then before you get into the lane you're hitting that mid-range shot. So I
Mhm.
don't know, because I really feel like the way he was defended, it was three or rim were the answers. I don't know
And I
too often how mid-range was the answer in that equation if they're still running ball screen action stuff. So I guess it
Mhm.
would be more isolation basketball if he's going to play more mid-range,
Shifted
in my
defense.
first thought.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. Like top of the key, everybody's lined up and doing that, but in a more of a broken play or the defense has shifted or whatever. I think what would cost Ant at the rim sometimes is sometimes just simple drop, like the big is back there, but it can also be another second sort of defender, like rotating over to the rim. And it's like you are going to need to make a really special finish here to be able to score at the rim. If
But
you're
in
Ant,
drop, the three was the answer there, though. If they're playing drop like that,
sure, if it was up top. I'm more talking about like swing. He's on it's the opposite side, and he's now
oh, yeah,
like attacking the
all
basket.
the times they get to that.
They want they want to get to that
I know
though.
they want to get to that. I'm
I'm
saying they
saying
don't get to it.
I'm trying to find a way to say that I think there's room for him to improve immensely his floater game or shots from like
Yeah,
8 feet
yeah, I
that are
agree.
more effective. Is that even what he's talking about with mid
I don't think
range or
so.
we're talking about? I don't either. But that is an area, and I would just say like a floater counts as a mid range shot,
I
and
agree.
Ant being able to do something there would make a big difference in his overall mid range numbers, which have to. He's a 37% 3-point shooter in his career and a 36.7% mid range shooter.
I
3-2,
I agree, and
it's scary on the surface
I
to
think
think
the
that he's going to shoot more.
harm is that if he is so, because he does fixate on what he does, and it was great for the three ball. I think the
Yep.
harm would be wait, he just passed up a step in three to take two more
Mhm.
dribbles and shoot that 18
Yeah.
footer. I think that
That
would be
would
something that you might see in the regular season. You'd be like, why didn't he shoot the three there? Like that step in
Mhm.
three against Rupp was there and he didn't take it.
Right.
That would be the concern in my mind.
Mhm.
Because I just don't know, like what you're talking about, I agree with. But if your offseason is spent to something that might show up twice in a game, like for how much they get to it.
Okay, a floater would, but okay, how about we paint this one where it's like he gets into like 12 feet and he kind of stops, maybe even picks up his dribble and he
Sure.
starts going to like his pivot thing, and now
Out
he's
of
taking a
jail.
weird leaner. Yeah, he puts him. I get what you're saying. He only is in that maybe floater position that I'm describing once or twice a game. But he gets himself in that mid-range jail often. And if he's now thinking, okay, I got it at 12 feet and I worked on all these moves in this area, I don't need to kick out to Jaden in the corner. I can go pump, spin, lean, Kobe, whatever. I bet you he'll be better at that stuff than he was a year ago, but I still don't think that's going to be anywhere near as profitable as your point of just taking the step in three, or second defender comes over and finding the kick there. I'm interested to see like how much he wants to do it.
That's right. Yeah. And when you're so good at the other things, I just don't like.
Right.
Yes, ideally you add something all the time, but in general, I think like getting better at his handle and finishing at the rim. And I understand what you're saying. Like sometimes the way they defended it, the finish at the rim was infinitely harder than just like a layup or whatever you want to describe it. But I just think in general, his finishing at the rim, because he missed some basic ones where you'd be like, whoa, how did that not go in? And then alongside the handle, like those would have been the two things I picked on. Not to say that I would have picked out, not to say the mid-range won't be helpful, but it's just going to be now that you have that, picking the right spots. And maybe them being like, oh, he has this, so let's change what we do offensively a little bit. I don't see them doing that because the other things are so profitable. It's not like I mean, I don't look at it and be like, man, if he had a mid range, I didn't think of that last year.
I think there's times where it would be beneficial to be better at the stuff, or to shoot a better percentage from those areas, and I think he could find that from having worked on it a little bit more. He's going to find himself in post-up situations or those jail situations, or even like just a step-in mid-range shot because the big is back.
Maybe the last plays of games too. Like we talked about how many game-winning shots and whatnot he's missed, and oftentimes the look is terrible. And that's where I think that's the spot where like you have that 18-footer where you're just trying to get that one step on a guy and then get a clean look. And if you're confident in that shot, that's maybe better. But yeah, I'm just saying, like, just in terms of in general throughout the course of a game, I just don't know how much it's going to pop up with all the other things he can do so well. But we'll see. We'll see. And the only thing I don't worry about, like I've said it already, is like being so excited about it that you're passing up the higher value things that you do so great because you want to show what you've worked on.
And that's what changed last year. 2 years ago, 38% of his shots were from the mid-range. Last year, 28% of his shots were from the mid-range. That's a big drop there. And those were replaced with threes, which he was as good as anyone outside of Steph Curry at taking at a high volume and making, So it's, I don't think
Steph is ever like, shoot, I need to get even better in my mid-range. Like, I don't think he worries that much about it. Like, obviously, he's good at everything, but
it does have the body type to be, more of an effective mid-range player, obviously, than Steph and some of those other guys who are at the top of the 3-point list there. But the point is, don't let it cannibalize the thing that you're great at. So I don't know. I mean, that'll be we'll see how much of that was lip service from Ant, but I do anticipate on Monday when we're talking to him at media day, he's going to say, I worked on my mid-range game a lot this summer, and he'll be elusive. It'll be like, we'll see how I'm going to incorporate it.
I will say clutch time offense is where I think that could pop up most beneficially in general. It's like, okay, it's hard to draw things up offensively. Like, what play was that? It's like, nobody does that. Like, there are no coaches who are like, look at this masterpiece. There's maybe like the full court receivers inbounds play that Carlisle does, but like, great. But in general, it's best player being like, I got to get to my spot. And Ant's spots are harder to get to because isolation is the easiest way to get to your spot. Like pick and roll, now you're really kind of coverage dependent on what you get to do. And isolation, if you can be like, I know I can get a step and get to 18 feet and hit, and we will like this shot, and we can rely on this shot, that is where it will pop up most, to answer your initial question.
Right. No, and I think we talked through it. There'll be value in it at end of games. There'll be value in it when the rim is shut off, and you find yourself in that jail area, and there'll be value in being able to have like a combo floater lob to Rudy type thing. Those are all mid-range area things that, frankly, right now Anthony Edwards is a top 5-10 player in the league, and he's not very good at any of those things.
Right.
So like, I know we're kind of like tongue in cheek with some of this, but if he does get better at this stuff, he's going to become a better player, provided it doesn't come at the cost of the things that he's truly elite at, finishing at the rim against one defender and hitting threes and step in threes and a high volume of threes there. These are the things at 24 though, where you like it.
Throughout
you
the
gotta
season,
play the strategy and the math of it, and how much is he? Yeah, how
I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's taking too many mid ranges early in the season. Like I wouldn't be surprised if that's the talking point at all, just because we've seen in the past when he picks something up, and I don't blame him at all. I would too. I'd be like, look at how good I am at this. Like, look at what I've worked on.
Look at the threes last
year.
Right.
But that would have a great payoff. I wouldn't be surprised if there are times where it's like, why did he take that?
It's like, if
it goes in,
what is the payoff?
Shot. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. And then he'll be like, but that's why you have 82 games, and you can be like, okay, we'll lean back more into this or whatever. So
and in the playoffs, it'll probably be more valuable.
Exactly, because more often clutch time style situations, even if they aren't clutch time, just arise if defense is really giving you problems. Like a mid-range shot would have been helpful even against Oklahoma City, of like, I have to find a way to score 30 points here because we can't.
There were occasional times where like, that was a nice move in the mid-range.
Yes.
Clean shot. It didn't look like they were even like guarding you there. So there's like, it's obviously in there. And I think we all know that it's about like taking the right ones, because clearly he doesn't take the right ones. He shoots under 37% from the mid-range. He shot 39%. He's never shot 40% from the mid-range in his career. And to increase that, you got to at least be like in the mid 40s if you want to be a guy who's taking taking like a third of your shots from mid-range, which I think he wants to be. So we just got to see we got to see if he can find the effectiveness.
But man, he's got to be better at the rim too. Like you can add the mid-range, that's all great, but you got to be better at the rim too, because what you are talking about is true of like, sometimes it's really congested in there, but man, there were a lot of times where you like almost looked away because you're like, I ain't got a layup here. And then you're like, that didn't go in. But at a really high rate for an incredible athlete like he is, like it.
Do you think it will get better at the rim this year?
I don't understand why that can't. I know that people talk about touch and whatnot, but I would think that you could work on that and learn that craft just as easy as you could learn something else, frankly.
Yeah. And to that end, I think it will. I think
if you put the time and effort into it,
and that's what they're going to, he can.
But improvements are made in the off season. I mean, that's generally true. Like, you got better at things in the off season, and then you learn how to incorporate it during the season.
Yeah,
it's kind
application.
Of the way best. Yeah, like it's very rare that you develop a skill during the season.
Yeah. I do think he started getting the line more right in the second half of the season.
No, he definitely did. That was
things.
It was, as he did the hold the ball low thing, and like was just getting a lot of like even though those calls kind of went away in the playoffs, which was interesting. But he got to the line more. But it's just, in general, very rarely was it because of what he was doing at the rim.
Sure,
it was usually en route to taking off, where he was
strip slapping.
The most obvious foul call, like that's where he was getting that. I just think that's where he's leaving the most money on the table, like and ones, things like that,
like the drawing contact and finishing without it being a dunk.
Right.
Like, there's nobody in the league who's better at drawing contact and dunking than Anthony Edwards. It's just not, that's once a week, you're dunking on somebody. There's 40 times in the week where you're like going to the basket, taking a bump and finishing,
Right.
you know, and are those ones, can that go up? And I think so. That's being in better shape. That's reading the game better.
And it's probably focused in the little
strong.
moment too, you know, like
And I think those things are all going to go up for Ant this year.
Sure.
I do, you know.
That's where I just think would be like, I agree with you that he's talked about mid-range. He'll talk about it, I think, again in training camp. But I think that focus around the rim in that 0 to 5 foot area will be the most profitable, I think, if there's actually a leap. But I agree, the mid-range is where there is the most room to grow. But I think that would be where he would see the biggest payoff if he's better. Because last year, remember, he'd be like, I don't need my we would be bringing up and he wouldn't even, he'd be like, am I bad at the rim? Like, do I miss a lot of layups? And they're like, well, the stats say you're horrible at it, you know? But yeah, he would, I don't think he saw it as a problem, like, ever.
Right. Yeah, it is going to be, like downloading the information of, because he's great, you know, like
He's
it's
great.
all like, I mean, they're all effective. It's like, it's just like, what can you do to be across the board 10% more effective?
Right.
And that alone might be what like boosts you up in the MVP conversation from being
I think that's what makes you unstoppable. I think that's what makes you defense proof, you know, like to where, and you can say it's because of the pieces the Wolves have around him and whatnot, but it was clear at some points you aren't always defense proof, which you kind of have to be if you're going to be truly one of like the top 5 MVP type players.
Yeah, no, and that, to me, I said like that's like the theme of the season for me.
Does he make that leap? Because that's required to be a championship team. But I think, frankly, like if he's going to, the best version of Anthony Edwards is also one that brings it. I don't know what percentage, because it's not going to be every game, and it can't be, and it probably wouldn't be. But what percentage can you be a more? Yeah, can you get back? Can you be an honest, non-Kendrick Perkins voter, all defense candidate? You know, like. I mean, that kind of impact, you know, like to where at least you can get 10 all defense votes and we won't roll our eyes at it of like somebody voted in all defense, you know, to where we're like, yeah, I see that, you know, like he was in that conversation. You can do it. Great players have done it for years, decades, you know.
I like that. And I think so. It's, I mean, maybe you can't choose between the two. Maybe to go to the championship, you need the defensive thing from me and you need this 10% better at everything, which I understand is like asking a lot, even of a 24-year-old. Trying to let go of some of the, it's hard, but I do think I haven't talked about the defensive one very much, but when I've been thinking about the Wolves and I've been thinking about, okay, you ran back the same roster largely, maybe you're even a little bit worse. What do you need to break through the ceiling of what you've got? And I just keep coming back to Ant, you know, I just keep coming back to Ant of like, what other ways are there with this team to make a discernible leap or even just big step? I think Julius can get better. And I think he will. I wouldn't be like floored if Julius Randle was an all-star this season. I think there's some of that. I think DiVincenzo can be better incorporated. Conley can be healthier. Maybe Dillingham works. Nas and Jaden are a little bit better. Like those things are all collectively a more than incremental step forward, but a leap, a big step. I think, it all comes from Ant, and it's about what you were talking about with like the pick sixes in the playoffs, where it doesn't just light his hair on fire, it lights the whole team on fire, and that's his superpower. I really think that's his superpower. How can we start that more often? And I'm glad we talked about the defense, because I do think that's a big part of that equation.
I agree with you. Julius can be an all-star, like all this stuff, like the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, Julius was an all-star. Like that's, if he just does that throughout the season, and that's how you can win, 54 games or whatever. Sure. But like to win the championship, to beat the other best teams in the NBA, I think it's going to come down to those things that you just talked about. Yep.
Awesome, man. I got nothing else. You got anything? We miss anything?
I'm good. I'm ready for the season, I guess.
It starts on Monday. Jason and I will be at Media Day. So the plan for this season is Jace is going to be on Mondays with me again. We're not going to do it on this Monday because we're going to be at Media Day, but you can kind of plan on starting a week with the show with Jace all season, and we will start the season next week at Media Day. See you there, man.
Can't wait.
All right. Coming up next on the show, Chris Hine and I are going to record tomorrow, Wednesday afternoon, and we're going to talk about media day and some questions we want to get answered in training camp. And I think a lot of them will be, kind of pointed versions of what we were talking about today with Jason, last week with John. So that's coming up next on the show. But until then, he's Jace. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.